Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
Welcome back to the Prime Life Podcast, where we explore longevity, innovation, and the future of retirement. I'm Mary Crean. Today's conversation is one you won't want to miss. Today's guest is Melissa Reilly. She's the founder of Stlth Consulting, a healthcare strategist and a builder in every sense of the word. After leaving a traditional executive path, Melissa now works fractionally with startups to help them grow and succeed. And this part I really love. She's also passionate about helping women build financial independence and create businesses of their own. Melissa, welcome to the Prime Life Podcast. Tell our guests a little bit more about yourself, and then we're going to dive right into the questions.
Mary, thank you so much for having me. It's such a delight. And I will talk a little bit maybe about me, but a little bit more probably about my journey, because I think that part is slightly more interesting. So I think I am a self-described workaholic, and I found myself after 25 years working at 3 of the largest healthcare organizations, United Health Group, Aetna, and Cigna. I wouldn't say burnt out, but maybe it was a little bit of unfulfilled. In the corporate world, I think people climb and they're like, I will get to the next level and I'll be a VP or a chief growth officer. And so as I was doing that, I was enjoying very much what I was doing and the teams that I were building, but it almost never went far enough for me. And I was always that person who got to be the vendor or provider or strategic initiative approver. And so in all these different roles that I had, these innovative founders would come to me with their business ideas, and they would be so passionate in talking about how they're changing in the world. And even though it was not my plan when I left, I actually was going to start my own venture-backed startup. What I actually found is I found even more joy helping these other founders build out their businesses. And the last 2 years, I think I say to everyone, they're probably annoyed about hearing this from me. I think I've just had more joy than any corporate role I could ever have.
Well, I can tell you as a former entrepreneur, the clients you're working with are fortunate to have you, because to really get your head around growth, scaling up, all of that doesn't always happen with every corporate individual who climbs successfully up the ladder as you do. So again, they're very fortunate to have you. But how has your definition of success changed from the corporate career? As you said, you could keep going higher and higher, but it wasn't enough for you, versus the work that you're building today.
So I think the dichotomy in the corporate side, I think a lot of my joy came from the massive scale or impact, right? So to serve 20 million lives, to own a large P&L, I think was so wonderful in some ways, because you were like, oh, this thing that I'm deploying, it's going to impact so many people. But as you went wider, I think you got further away from like impacting the one. I'll give an example. I work with this incredible founder who's doing like executive coaching for women. It's a brand new business that she's starting. And to be able to actually help her shape some of her first Instagram posts and see the first post go out, you just feel a little bit closer to the active work. This entity, this new being that she's creating, means so much to her. And so to actually get to see that from a founder, from an entrepreneur, is just so incredible. I think the other thing that was so impactful for me, and a founder encouraged me to pick up this book when I was leaving, it was called Designing Your Life. And so in Designing Your Life, they actually say that like how you spend your day, one of the things you do to make sure you're on this right path is you put these happy faces and sad faces against the activities and hours of your day. And when I look back and I said, in my old life, how many happy faces do I have versus in my new life, when I look at my calendar, how many happy faces do I have? Almost every single one of my meetings is a happy face. Even if the topic is sad, I have autonomy over where I spend my time in a way I didn't in my prior life.
I love that. And the emojis, simple yet profound. And they use that in social emotional learning. So I find that very interesting. So let's dive a little bit into women and their finances. I know you're passionate about that. What do you think holds most women back? And what's perhaps one shift that they can implement that can change everything?
The key to this, I have found, has been actually putting words around finances. So this whole journey began for me. I'm part of this incredible organization called the WBL. There's other organizations out there like Chief and others that, get women together. And I was just at a dinner conversation and this came up because this woman I was sitting next to was mentioning that like women actually don't talk about their finances. And so I reflected on that and I was thinking of all my conversations that I had in all those weeks where I was making the happy and sad faces. How many of them were actively about finances? Or as I would spend my weekends at my children's sporting events or others, how many times did finances actually come up between women? We were more likely to be like, hey, did you get that bag on sale? Like that might be where the finances came in versus being like, have you planned for retirement? Are you depending only on your husband or partner or whomever for your retirement versus actively even speaking about it? And so that kind of put me down the rabbit hole of investigating women and finances just generally. And I realized this was not a Melissa problem. This might be a gender.
Absolutely. And women have so much financial power, and that continues to grow. We've talked about that on Prime Life Podcast. So I think that's a good fact that you spiked. And I would agree with you. I think as women, it's like, oh, I got this bag on sale, or yeah, I really love that outfit. Where did you get it? And, I think again, we're talking about deals we're getting or discounts and, that type of savvy, but not necessarily sharing maybe some highlights or even some challenges around some of the things that women are facing, especially as we think about, because it's never too early to plan for retirement. And often we're talking about those kinds of things on Prime Life Podcast. So I think it's great that you brought that up. But you're not just advising women, you're actively building in Connecticut. And I hear that you're developing a commercial property. How did that all come about?
Yeah, so it almost ties back to our previous topic, which I so agree with. It was actually, I was getting my hair done with my hairdresser, and she was mentioning that she would love to have her own building. And so I had done residential real estate rental before, and silly me, I go, well, commercial real estate can't be that hard, Mary. I can of course do this. And so I had been a real estate agent previously. I am a real estate agent. It's something my mom and I did 12 years ago when my daughter was born. We did this together. And so it was like always my little side hustle as I was like designing my life. I had so much fun going out. I go, okay, commercial real estate can't be hard. Call up my mom. She puts me in touch with a fabulous broker, Jen Goslin. My hairdresser and I were like, okay, we can do this. We start shopping for properties. And then we get into the finances. And again, okay, so that was kind of a little bit of the awkward part because we both had to be very transparent about like what our finances were. B, if you've ever done an SBA loan, which so many people probably haven't, they are pretty nebulous in terms of the requirements. Now that we've worked our way through it, I can tell you like some easy tips. Like one is, figure out what your operating agreement looks like between you and any partners. That's going to be so, so important. Two is get your finances on the table. You'll be asked for them no more than 35 times throughout this process. And if you fill out the form one way, someone might say, no, can you fill it out this way? I think we literally filled out one form like 18 times before we actually got this loan done. And then once you get that loan secured, then you start going through all of the environmental and the inspection processes. Again, there's probably 4 to 5 that have to be done at no less than $1,000, probably more each inspection. Really having a good command of your finances was so reinforced for me throughout this process because I was managing this fledgling business that was starting to do quite well, but may not have been the right kind of income for this SBA type loan. So I just remember having multiple spreadsheets laid out in front of me going, okay, like the numbers need to look like this to make the SBA loan work, but I also need to make sure I have money to hit payroll. And I didn't have anyone married to chat with about this. And so that was so stressful.
Now, I can not relate to the SBA loan because I've never done one, but in my past, in terms of being a former entrepreneur, like you said, making payroll, and also when you were talking about all the different financial documents that you have to fill out for various things, and it's not always cookie cutter. And I do believe that with good intentions, financial institutions and organizations ask you for the same finances differently to make sure there's consistency and that you're crystal clear so that like you said, how much money you need to come in for operating. And I love what you said about the partnership. Any partnerships or collaborations, best to be clear as you can be. So if something occurs that's not so favorable, if you do need to separate, that you've done your best to be transparent, as you said, and also you are coming into the relationship with a whole heart. And I think that's so important. And I find it interesting too, because not to genderize, but I'm sure there's a little bit of a difference with men and women. And we could go down a whole other episode, and perhaps we will, because I would love to dig in a little bit deeper with you about that. And I do commend you because I do think that oftentimes women are overlooked to discuss finances for investments, or even again, as we plan for retirement, our paths, if you will, or our journeys, I should say, could look different than men for various reasons with childcare, caregiving. Maybe we've left the workplace for a while, we've gone back into it, all of those kinds of things. And overall, perhaps if we were to make a general statement, maybe men don't experience that as much. I'm not saying they don't experience it. I'm actually married to someone who for several years was the primary caregiver, and and that was in the days where people would look at you a little bit more with suspect. Like, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're taking care of the kids. So we talk about that still to this day, and we kind of giggle about it. And I'm glad things, I think, have evolved. So, I think that's really, really neat. If someone's feeling stuck in a version of success that no longer fits them, you talked earlier about doing that corporate job, climbing high up, but still not feeling very fulfilled. So there definitely others have been on our podcast and have talked about what you just said. So there definitely is a theme here. But what would you tell them if they are feeling stuck, so they don't feel like, oh no, I'm overwhelmed with that, I'm the only one going through that, I'm a little frightened? What would you tell them, Melissa?
What's been interesting for this journey for me, kind of mentioned the word evolution, and I think that is so right. I think coaches for me have been really instrumental. So I think the first thing I would have said is like, maybe get a coach. And one of the things that I've learned through helping my friend build out her performance coaching business is oftentimes women are told it's a you problem. Like, get a new planner, organize better. I mean, if I could show you how many planners I've had across my desk at one point, like oftentimes it's not a you problem. It's you're in a system or in a construct that may not be the best for you. So maybe start with a coach. B, I think goes to what we just talked about, is like truly understand your finances and what is driving you. Like, start talking about it. Start, writing things down and try to understand what your financial picture is, because that financial picture starts to be your lever. And for those that can't leave their day job because there's not a severance option or there's not, a safety net for them, and I totally get that. What I've been really encouraging people to do is find a side hustle that can work for them. So I'll give you another great example. This wonderful woman, Laura, had two businesses she came to me talking about. And so one was more of like a safety tech business, very exciting, needed in the world. And the other was her interior design business. And we've talked about it. Like, I was almost her coach in that I was saying, like, you're struggling so hard on the safety tech business, you're fundraising, and we all know fundraising is no joy. But this interior design business, you are so natural and so good at it. Allow that to work for you. And then if your heart is even more so in that safety tech business, then your design business can fund that dream, right? Because it's generating that growth and that revenue for you. And Mary, I have to say, like, she even had some, and she shares this, even how she named her business originally was more around being affordable. And her new name is now around intentional. And we talk about how it's such a shift. And so she has grown along the way. Her revenues have started to grow. And I will tell you, my kitchen has never looked better, Mary.
Well, I bet it does. I was going to ask about that. So you talked about some things that as a marketing person, I love to hear, because you're talking about repositioning, talking about maybe a slight rebrand, messaging may have shifted. And I think that's a really great example to hear. And sometimes it's also having someone to share things with, like you mentioned earlier. Sometimes you don't have someone that you know, like, and trust, because we know a lot of people, everyone has opinions. And I think that can be tricky sometimes, even well-meaning people. They want to give you advice because they truly want to help you, but perhaps it's not the best advice. And so ultimately, we have to trust our gut instinct, but also it's always nice to have a small cadre of individuals that we can call upon to test some ideas out or to get second opinions, perhaps.
Yeah, or just reinforcement. I do love that. And I think what you talk about is like having a board of advisors. I believe that too. I also call them my fairy godmothers. And so there's probably like 2 or 3 women that have been very sage and instrumental to me as I went down this journey. As I mentioned before, kind of at that break point for me, I didn't really know what I was going to do next. I had this vision of maybe starting this divorce coaching business. And I was kind of journaling about it while I was at the pool club with my children, and I would go for walks with other women and we'd talk about like our shared dreams. But these fairy godmothers, they would be like, here's a book, Melissa, or hey, we're all headed off to Egypt. I'm not kidding, for a summer adventure. Do you want to join us? And so I like call up my husband. I'm like, I have this opportunity to go to Egypt. Do you care? And he's like, well, you do have wild ideas, but this sounds legit. And so when else do you have a chance to do this? And so, having friends that you can take these little sabbaticals with, or these board of advisors to run some ideas by, it's so meaningful and so helpful.
I love that. So as we're getting to the end of our conversation, before I ask you the final question, what are some tips or highlights you'd like to share with our audience?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
Nassau is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
Yeah, so I think the first one comes down to know yourself, and that means like what makes you happy or sad, right? Like understand what brings you that joy. The finances, just start talking about it. I think I've had some of the best conversations just by talking about how my business did this year and saying, hey, these were my revenues. Here's some of my struggles. It feels so foreign the first time, but if you just kind of step into it, you will be overwhelmed and excited by the opportunities it starts to bring. I think tip 1 is kind of know yourself. 2 is maybe put it out there in whatever flavor you feel comfortable about. And I think my final tip is always just like keep searching for that joy. I think we all know those Debbie Downers out there that complain about all the things. And I've really tried to orient myself towards those that maybe see complaints as opportunities. And so you'll hear it in like the good thing is, or the good news is, those people that make those shifts and redirects. And I've been really trying to spend more time with those that are bringing the light versus maybe those that are more focused on the negative.
I am so glad you mentioned that, because I was actually thinking of that during our conversation. And I know personally in my life, I've had to do that. And that means sometimes shedding some folks that you've been friends with, or you can't really shed family, but you can alter the conversations, or you can temperate the frequency. Because, and I even find a good litmus test is just walk around and ask someone how they're doing. How are you today? And listen to the answers. And it's funny, I started to really pay attention to that. I'm great, or I'm good, or I'm so busy, kind of just weigh that, because it does matter. It really does, because it can impact, especially if you're an empath, which I am, unfortunately. Melissa, you've done a lot of interesting things, healthcare strategist, executive, etc. Why do you wake up every day and do what you do?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I have thought about that a little bit. I think it's impact for me, Mary. I mean, I do like this competitive idea of like building a thing or a something, but what I've found is that something can shift, but everything that I'm doing creates some sense of meaning, right? Like the building, we've taken a very decrepit space and it's going to be gorgeous. And with all these companies, they're at a certain stage, but their growth and their potential is so amazing. And so I just find myself having much more meaningful conversations and just trying to bring meaning into all that I'm doing.
I love that answer. And I love what you said about this decrepit space. I was never fortunate to own commercial real estate, but being in the health and wellness space, my husband and I together renovated really horrible looking spaces. And it's so nice to take a step back. Of course, there was the benefit to the landlord, and to see like this huge transformation. And it does make you feel fabulous. And I'm sure it makes you even feel more fabulous if you own the property. If an individual or an organization wants to get in touch with you, Melissa, what's the best way? We're going to put everything in the show notes.
Yeah, I think the easiest way is email or LinkedIn. And so for email, it's Melissa@Stlth Consulting. I tried to be cute and took all the vowels out. So if you see a vowel in that, just remove it, or via LinkedIn. And I'm always happy, as much as I have time, to talk to someone who's considering a shift. Sometimes we end up working together and I love that. Or just be an ear for someone that's saying, hey, my life isn't going the way I want it. How can I have the courage to shift it into something more meaningful?
I think that's great. And I appreciate you that you're that type of human, because we never know how much of an impact we can have on someone's life. And it could be really transformational to them and for them. Thank you for joining me today, Melissa. It was great chatting with you. Really appreciate the introduction from Allison Holzer.
She's the best. And we talk about finances. I love that.
Yes, exactly. She is the best. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. And I hope everyone has a fabulous day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary.